Let's wind the clocks back about 4 years to the most profitable year for films, at least as long as I've been alive, 2019, when 9 films had made over $1 billion at the worldwide box office, 7 of which were under Disney's umbrella, and things were never looking brighter for Hollywood. It seemed like movies were exploding as theaters were rolling in the dough and Hollywood was sitting on a big pot of gold that nobody could ever take away. That was taken away in almost an instant by a certain virus. A virus that opened the floodgates for not only delaying releases when something like, just a random example, 2 of your most essential roles in creating any film deciding to go on strike happens, but also making streaming more prominent as they knew people will be staying at home more often, and unlike food delivery services that add like 5 extra service fees to your already expensive order just to get it delivered, streaming is a once-a-month fee, so it's a bang for your buck that also allows you to stay at your home, something that a lot of people found that they would prefer either which way. With studios reducing their windows for when movies will leave theaters and appear on your home TV, and even TV and streaming shows becoming just as cinematic as cinema itself, if not more so, people are seeing less and less of a reason to leave their homes just to watch a screen, something they could easily do at home. Ticket sales as a result plummeted for a lot of theaters, and no film has seen that enormous amount of success that we're seeing for so many films in that golden year for Hollywood. Oh, except for Spider-Man No Way Home, Jurassic World Dominion, Top Gun Maverick, Avatar The Way of Water, the Super Mario Bros. Movie, and even frickin' Barbie. Yeah, all of these movies saw huge success at the box office, and yet films that you can compare to that juggernaut year 2019's lineup are either flopping entirely or absolute maximum underperforming. Toy Story 4 was a huge success, but Lightyear bombed. The remakes of Aladdin and Lion King exploded with their box offices, but Little Mermaid too little of a splash for Disney to recognize it as one of the better remakes that it is. Avengers Endgame is the closest any film has gotten to beating James Cameron at the box office, and Captain Marvel and Spider-Man Far From Home had also reached the $1 billion mark, but the MCU hasn't seen that kind of success since then, and probably never will. Clearly, COVID has changed the way that the realm of mass media cinema has reached audiences, and even though it's been established, mostly by Warner Brothers' idiotic day-and-day release strategy from 2021, that films are more profitable when they're released in theaters with ticket sales and everything, successes and failures from this year have been, and most likely can be with future releases, determined by whether they spent pennies or boatloads of cash. And yet, those $6 billion films I mentioned neither had nor obviously needed cheap price tags. The Mario movie is the least expensive out of all of them, and it still ranks up as Illumination's most expensive production. So, apart from being good movies, -1, and just being different from the mountains of superhero movies and outdated nostalgia bait that we've been getting, kinda, not really. Shut up. What are these movies doing that's drawing audiences in? Why are they coming to see these films but not Quantum Mania, Dial of Destiny, or The Flash? I thought back to when my wife and I went to see the Mario movie and the Barbie movie, and how everyone who came out there was dressed as these characters. Everyone was dressed as Mario, Luigi, and Peach at the Mario movie. Everyone was wearing pink at the Barbie movie, even a lot of guys. It reminded me quite a bit of a lot of comic book conventions, which I had realized in that instant weren't slowed down post-pandemic, at least not as much as movies. It was something that people were willing to come out to because of the appeal of meeting other people doing the same thing. You could watch a movie at home and by this point have about the same experience you could at the theater, arguably with less distractions and a cheaper and wider variety of snacks, but dressing up as a character at home wouldn't have the same appeal as dressing up as one at events like a party or convention. If anything, that'd be pretty awkward. And that's when it hit me. All these movies that were bringing in $1 billion weren't just seen as movies. They were seen as events. And the ones that flopped, we'll get to that in a second. Even outside the realm of dressing up as characters, though a Maverick costume would be pretty awesome, Top Gun Maverick made the smart decision of having its initial release on Memorial Day, so it was seen as sort of this patriotic event initially, and word of mouth ended up allowing it to continue that reputation for basically the whole summer, including 4th of July now that I think about it. No Way Home was a cinematic crossover event of 3 different cinematic Spider-Man universes. It was a celebration of Sony's grand legacy of Spider-Man adaptations. Avatar? Let's face it, any film with Cameron in the director's chair is going to be an event. Even Jurassic World Dominion, paired up with the Jurassic Park brand basically being seen as a worldwide event in its own right, was advertised as the dinosaurs no longer being contained on this one island, but rather roaming across our world, which roped audiences in with the endless possibilities of what could happen in the film. It didn't deliver on that promise, at all, but nevertheless, people were enticed by the premise. Even me. And I regret that. So, what are the bombs of this era failing to do on top of, again, spending way too much on their productions and other stupid moves like, releasing a Haunted Mansion movie at the end of July? It's a Halloween movie. Think. Well, for some of the films, it's that they're being treated not as events, but rather just as other movies, something that Disney especially has been infamous for. Dial of Destiny was treated as just another Indiana Jones film. Haunted Mansion was treated as just another Haunted Mansion film. Elemental was extremely lucky to, no pun intended, escape the fire on this thanks to the word of mouth, as their advertising treated it as just another animated film, as they also did with Strange World and Encanto. The logic behind a lot of films like this is that if you put your film in theaters, it's bound to make more money than just putting it on streaming. And while, like I mentioned earlier, that is technically true, the thing that puts studios between a rock and a hard place is that you simultaneously have to put people in a place where they have to come to the theater to see your movie, which they're doing, not give them a predetermined time frame of when they'll be able to see it at home, which they weren't doing before but they're doing now, but also give them a stronger reason behind the idea that they have to see your movie in theaters, other than, at the moment, it's the only place you can see it. Not only have studios generally shortened the window for when people could watch their films at home, but I mean, people waited 2 to 3 years for a virus to stop being a global pandemic. They've developed a lot more patience than they used to. They can wait for the film to come out on streaming, especially if it's only a month or so, and so in order to get them to the theater, you have to treat your film as a bigger event than just another movie to see, because, newsflash, we have plenty of those at home. However, as we found out, even treating your film as an event doesn't always help the box office either. For over a year or so, The Flash was screened to a ton of people and dubbed as the greatest comic book movie ever made by executives, celebrities, and even Comic-Con goers, but when the actual film came out, not only did the studio lose a tremendous amount of money despite all their best efforts, but nobody was talking about it. Some people obviously went to see it. I mean, the box office wasn't nobody went to see this bad, and yeah, nobody liked it, myself included, but even negative word of mouth is still word of mouth, and this film didn't even have that going for it. People were more enticed to see Velma for hate watching. Why? Because they could hate watch it at home. But the main thing I'm getting at is that simply hyping up your film as a huge event isn't enough. You have to know your audience well enough to know when your film will be seen as an event. Alongside the fact that the eventful factor of the DCEU has basically been dead for a good number of years now, The Flash is not a character that audiences are naturally going to see as big or eventful. Despite being the central figure of, and the movie being based on, one of the biggest comic book events in history, movie-going audiences simply don't see him that way. Superman became an American icon over decades of comic books and serial films long before his cinematic events. Batman, thanks to the Adam West show that capitalized on the freshness of color TV and a lot of tropes going on in that era, was already integrated into pop culture before his cinematic events. With every other character, you have to build them up as eventful because we're now just starting to get to know them. To go back to those billion-dollar juggernauts, a lot of them started with cheaper alternatives before they threw mega millions at these massive blockbusters. Mario started as an arcade game that cost people a quarter before he exploded into the gaming juggernaut that he is. James Cameron had to start off with a sci-fi thriller on a paper-thin budget before studios started trusting him with the mega million-dollar budgets. Granted, you can make the same argument with The Flash and his significantly cheaper TV show, but the thing you gotta remember is that the CW doesn't require that big of an audience, and as well acclaimed by critics as the Arrowverse was for a while, and as long as it ran, it wasn't the globe-shattering event that something like Adam West's Batman was. Now, am I saying that every film needs to start off small and that no franchise besides Batman or Barbie can ever be big in film again? Not necessarily. Some things are more naturally inclined to be perceived as events, like dinosaurs or a patriotic blockbuster on Memorial Day, but that right there is exactly what I am saying. Use your common sense and know your audience well enough to know what they'll perceive as an event to get an idea of what to spend your massive budgets on. Simply spending a massive amount of money on a random comic book character or a tired archaeologist icon that was popular in the 80s, whether or not you say it's a big event, won't make your film eventful enough to draw people in. If anything, if you're not sure if your big, expensive idea will draw people in enough to be profitable, it's smarter to start off with a small-scale representation of that idea and see if it takes off. But don't ever blow $300+ million on a new franchise expecting that to be enough to impress audiences. That's practically the equivalent of flashing cash, and no one ever falls for that. A film doesn't become an event when it has a lot of money or recognition behind it. It becomes an event when the people of the world come together to celebrate and enjoy in harmony an icon that they cherish, whether it's characters, dinosaurs, American patriotism, or simply a world-renowned director and his passion project being represented on the big screen. And that is the secret to making a billion-dollar success.